Hey guys, Henning and Morten from FlippedNormals here. In this video, we are going to do another portfolio review where we are looking at a dinosaur from Alexander, and we're looking at a Snow White sculpt from Theo. Before we get into that, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.
You might be able to tell that apparently we have like some kind of fetish when it comes to dinosaurs, because it seems like they just pop up a lot, but maybe that's more like people doing them than necessarily us wanting to review them.
Yeah, it's a really good. They're really good assets to show a lot of your skills as a creature artist. They feature very heavy use of textures. That you need to have a solid understanding of design and sculpting, anatomy, all those skills. So they're genuinely very hard models to do. And we thought this model here was a really interesting example, because when we just looked at this, we were like, damn, this is tight. And it is. You know, it works really well from this view here, and didn't really have a whole lot of feedback on it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, okay, maybe we'll just skip this one because I think it actually might be too good to review.
Yeah.
Then we actually get close up, and then that's where we start to see the problems.
If I were to use this production here in a model, and we would use it for this view here, which I think is a fair assumption that it would be, considering that it's presented from this view. Like, you know, if you show me this picture, then I think it's fair game to critique this. If I had to use this in production, I would probably have to redo a lot of the work. It's so soft and so undefined in a lot of different areas that I probably wouldn't really be able to just enhance it. I probably couldn't go in and just do like a filtering job or smooth something out. I would probably have to retexture big parts of this character, where I would have to smooth out a lot of things, rework up the sculpt, get the mid-frequency right, get the main shapes right, and sharpen stuff up. And then probably also retexture it when it comes to the albedo as well.
Yeah, because one of the things that stood out to me here, and just in terms of the textures, and especially the presentation, is that it seems to be a little overblown. And I think that was also sort of like what caught us off guard when we just looked at it initially, is that the lighting compared with the textures actually managed to hide sort of like more of the fundamental issues with the sculpt. And you can see the closer you get to the model, obviously the more you're going to start noticing the mistakes. And if you put something like this into your portfolio, like Henning was saying, then it's fair game to critique, because this is the kind of stuff that you would be presenting, right? So there's definitely a case to be made that if you're making something for a portfolio, you want to highlight the best of what you've done. So if you don't want, let's say, the recruiters or whoever's evaluating it to catch on to the fact that there isn't actually as much resolution as you might let it on to be, then don't show it that close up. But now that you've done it, now sort of like we can start to see where the issues are.
Yeah, if you don't show the inside of the mouth like this, because then you're going to assume that this is now fair game to critique. If you show the inside of the mouth, well, now it should hold up on the inside of the mouth like this. It is just a tricky one. Like if you look at this area here all the way to the screen right, and you're trying to figure out what is this? If you look at this out of context, it's incredibly hard to figure out what this part here actually is. Is it like a landscape, or is it a carpet, or what is it? I probably wouldn't have guessed that it's a back of a dinosaur. This is because everything is very soft and very undefined. I'm assuming this here is made for a game asset, because it's very low res. But even so, I wouldn't either kill this view entirely or pimp it up significantly.
Yeah, and one of the issues when it comes to perhaps the shading, perhaps the texturing, and it looks like there's a cavity map that goes into every single crevice, where you have these, you know, the classic dinosaur scales, and it actually, I feel like it serves the opposite purpose that you normally would have it. Like it helps, normally that would help create depth. It's kind of like an ambient occlusion in between smaller things within the character, but because it's so bright in there, it actually kind of looks like a toy that's a little bit dusty.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel as well. Like I generally prefer to not use these kind of cavity maps directly. If I do, it's very much a starting point. Like here, it looks incredibly symmetrical. Maybe this is a limitation from like a technical limitation where you just have to have it symmetrical because you only have enough UV space for one of them. But I would really work all these details into it. It's like if you look at this region as well, it's incredibly difficult to actually see what this area here is out of context. So how would I fix this? The very first thing I would do is just accept that if you're going to be presenting it from this angle here, then, or from this close-up, then it needs to hold up at this close-up. And that opens up Pandora's box of CG. This is what we used to do in film a lot, where we would specifically work with characters this close up. So the first thing you need to do, you need to spend a lot of time sculpting up the main shapes. This is probably, you're probably dealing with like, maybe it's a 10 million poly model just for the close up here, and just sculpt it like crazy. Even if you aren't going to be, of course you aren't going to be using the 20 million in shot, but something where you have 20 million, 10, 20 mil, so that you can make a displacement map from that. Now you're going to get incredibly sharp details from it.
Yeah, and one of the other issues, especially once if we let's say we get past the point, because we talked a lot about mid-frequency also in the other portfolio reviews that we've done, and most of these models suffer from mid-frequency, sort of like there's lack in mid-frequency, and there's a little bit here, but more importantly is like when you have all the individual scales like this, there's a lot that can be done in texturing, and doing it in texturing and then translating that into, let's say, a displacement map. You apply your textures then as a displacement map, and then going in and enhancing them in ZBrush afterwards. That's kind of the tricky part here, because a lot of this has to be sculpted by hand, unfortunately.
Yeah, there is just no secret to this. If you try to be smart about this, then you often get hit very heavily with the problems of that. One of the things I'm also seeing is that it looks like the color texture here, the albedo, doesn't actually blend that nicely in with the rest of what we're seeing here. This area here is very white. It doesn't actually seem like it really blends in with the details we have here. I'm assuming here, if we were to see this as a completely flat texture, that the texture would be very painted and very loose in its definition, with some areas where there is some definition, like here, and a lot of very sharp frequency, or like a very grainy stuff here, very detailed stuff going on in these areas here. I would really go in and make sure that the color map really matches what we're seeing in the sculpt.
And again, like from this angle, right, I would say, cool, that looks pretty tight.
Holds up 100%.
That's a tight model. Everything is looking great. But because it's presented up close, there's just more for us to critique. The same thing goes with the gums as well. If you look at how the teeth are integrated, especially once you get up close, it doesn't feel like, it feels like the teeth are just like coming out of there. It doesn't feel like they're actually growing out of the skull from the inside. It's sort of like just placed on the gums, and it's easier for me to infer that because there's also a shot of the inside of the mouth where I can just see a plane, like a gum plane basically, running alongside the teeth.
I think it's very important in general when you're texturing that it doesn't look hand painted. You can totally hand paint it, like we have a whole tutorial on hand painting skin in Painter, but it doesn't look hand painted. It's like a means to an end. The advantage of hand painting something is that you have full control over every single element of it, but it's not that you don't want brush strokes like this kind of stuff. It looks like a drywall almost.
Yeah,
which has been treated
exactly. Yeah.
When I'm doing this kind of work, I'm heavily using photographic reference to break up the surface and really get something interesting. I'm also thinking about when it comes to this area here. I think the area of highest contrast is currently like right here. It's really bright, and then there's a lot of contrast going around here. I really prefer if this is around the eye. The eye is, like to say, like the entry to the soul of the character. The killer soul. So I really prefer if you have a lot more high contrast around here as well. So I would tone this down. I would take the whiteness here and make it a lot darker. And I would make maybe the contrast around the eye as well instead.
Yeah, because the problem is right now, it's the area between the nostrils and the eye that becomes the focus area of the face, which it really shouldn't be. And a good exercise here as well is to squint a lot, like actually just take it in Photoshop, blur it, or just like squint your eyes. Then you can kind of see the focus of it. It almost, like if you squint now, it almost looks like this is an eye by itself, and this shape here is almost like a whole dinosaur by itself. And then there's like an extra hole here where the eye just feels very secondary. Yeah, I mean, so in general, it's a tight model. Like the shapes are there, the silhouette is there. There's things that can be done to the mid frequency for sure. And like from an angle like this, the textures actually look a lot better, I would say, just because we don't get that overblown, like it's not too bright everywhere. But then also going in, and if you're showing it this close up as before, then you have to go in, you have to hand sculpt all of these little scales, and you have to have them be, quite high resolution, unfortunately.
It's kind of funny. I find that the area of like highest texture quality is almost like
The feet?
The feet.
Yeah.
It's not often you see that. Normally it's the opposite. Like people spend all their time on the head and then they don't give a crap about the feet. But in this case, I actually find the feet to be really nice. Same with the hands as well. Like this area here looks lovely. Like this is why are the feet and hands so much better than the face?
Yeah, actually, that's
like here you're seeing a really nice frequency as well. You're not even seeing in the face. You have so here we have like a general like mid frequency of what's going on in texturing, but here we have this super fine frequency here. I would love to see this frequency all over the model. This is I believe this is only in the color. You don't necessarily have to have this in your bump or normal, whatever you're using, but I would love to see this frequency. From a topological point of view, it's pretty tight. I was just looking at this before, and I would just make some of these loops a bit more even. Like this here is a bit too. It's a bit too far spaced.
Yeah.
If you're using Maya here, which I'm not sure if you are, then you can select this loop and select these loops and use edit edge flow, and that's going to essentially solve those problems. Same here as well. It's just a little bit tight, but general, pretty clean topology. You might want to have a few more loops around the joints where it's going to deform, just so you have a bit tighter deformation. But in general, nothing which can't be solved within like a few minutes of.
No, yeah, exactly. I would do the same thing for the nails, and I don't know, claws. I don't know what it's called. The claws on the feet, right? Those where it's right where they sort of like protrude out. Because in the model it's like continuation of the feet. It doesn't come out as natural as it could. Like a nail or claw will grow out from the inside. It doesn't just extend from the skin. So having just like 2 or 3 more edge loops in there to really make it grow out would add a lot.
Yeah, you can also add the claws and nails as separate pieces as well. That's what I often do.
Yeah.
Just so you can clearly get this like lip feeling around it. But overall, pretty solid work. We're really nitpicking here. If you hadn't shown this render here, we would have completely skipped your portfolio because it was so good. It's just because when we're looking at this and be like, great, this is awesome. Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's
so overall, fantastic job, and I'm really looking forward to seeing an update on this if an update will come.
Love to see an update. And also, in terms of just an extra bit of detailing there, do something about the texturing on the teeth, because right now they look like, are they textured?
I don't think so.
No, it just looks pretty clear. Like they're very blank, right? So maybe have some gradient or something, maybe like from top to bottom or reverse, so it's like darker at the bottom, like where maybe there's some food stuck in there, it could be whatever, but just not leave something untextured this close up.
And then we're looking at Theo's Snow White piece. So Theo has a really lovely portfolio which he sent over to us, and let's just have a look at this. So,
I think it's interesting because like it's one of those fundamental things with faces that a lot of people tend to do, myself included. I still do it. It's the proportions between the eyes, the mouth, and the nose, and the size of the entire head. Right? If you take away the hair here, everything is very squeezed in, very tight together. So it's almost you've deformed the skull too much. Like getting away from that like the fundamentals of how a skull would actually sit within Snow White's face there.
So from looking at this, I can clearly tell that Theo has a great understanding of 3D. Like from a technical point of view, like the gold material here is absolutely stunning. It's really hard to get gold to look right, and I think this is really well done. Same with the bow as well. The shader on like the white shader is really nice, and it's also like a really nice idea. There is some kind of
it's
arm
a really interesting piece
presenting Snow White with a golden apple. And the circle going around here as well is really lovely. I think the lighting is really great as well. But from looking at his other work as well, it's clear that there's a very big focus on characters. And this is the level that both Morten and I have gone through this level here, where you know 3D pretty well, and you can kind of make most things look good. And you reach kind of like a ceiling where it's kind of like a glass ceiling. Like you don't really understand, why aren't you getting better? You're using better shaders, you're using your lighting is better, but there is something off about the piece. And And I think this is going to sound like us just clicking the repeat FlippedNormals button, but more figure sculpting. Honestly, the biggest thing I think the artist here can do to get better is more figure sculpting. Like, and I don't mean as a piece like this, which is clearly an artistic piece with a story or in shaders, but just look at a female face. Look at a female scan maybe and just try to replicate that like a lot of different times. Then your pieces will be just far better every single time. There are a lot of small little things here, right? You can break it down into like different areas. Let's take a character. You can break it down into proportion, like overall proportion. How does the head fit in relation to the body? You can break it down into very specific pieces. I think the mouth is pretty good. I think the nose shape is a bit weird, and the connection to the skull up here is also a bit weird.
It's very in terms of just pure proportion, it feels like the bridge of the nose is very long, right? She has a very elongated face. Like you say, the mouth is quite nice, but the nose doesn't feel that feminine. And because the face gets squeezed in that much, it's more typical to see in men. For example, women would tend to have maybe a shorter head, and maybe like the forehead wouldn't be as long either, like having the hair come down a little further. And especially the size of the eyes. The eyes are huge here, so you probably want to scale that down as well. So for me, primarily, it's a pure proportion issue with the face.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there are a lot of things could be fixed with the move brush and maybe the smooth brush as well, to soften things out here.
Yeah.
I think the symmetry is a bit weird on the character as well, where the hair feels entirely symmetrical, and the eyes are also a bit lifeless. It's like the character isn't looking at the app. I think I don't exactly know what story is trying to tell here, but I think I would try to pose the character in a more dramatic sense, so that it's there is some mystery around the hand, and there is maybe it's awe or fright or excitement, maybe just something else than just I'm staring straight ahead.
Yeah, like an expression of surprise or something, where you can lift the brows, you can make those wider eyes, because right now it looks like Snow White is just she's actually staring right past the apple and just into space.
Yeah, she's waiting for a train right now, and she's zoned out because she's listening to a great podcast. So this shape here as well is also, this angle here is also pretty crazy to me. It's a very narrow face. I think I would have worked up. It's annoying, like work up, like just make it better. But like you don't want to hear that. But specifically this angle here is very, very straight.
Especially when you're dealing with if we play with the contrast in the image, right? We had this very gnarly, manly hand, I suppose, and then you have very angular and very quite like masculine shapes in her face, in terms of like the nose is quite boxy and the cheekbones are very sharp. I would do it the opposite way, where you sort of like you round out the cheeks, make her face very soft to sort of like complement how her hair is as well. That can sort of like increase the contrast in the image itself, aside from being like a way to make it look more feminine, but also a way to create more contrast with the hand and the environment.
One thing I will also say is there are a lot of these little scratches on the arm here, which makes it obviously look more uncomfortable. You know, if you have somebody who has an arm like this with tons of cuts all over, it's not super nice to touch and it looks a bit scary. But what I would do, I would really accentuate it. Like right now, it just looks like there are random scratches all over. Maybe you could turn it into some kind of tribal pattern, or there is some kind of like streak going down, almost like there is a fire going through the entire character. Do something to make the patterns cohesive and really work with the body.
Yeah, to me, it kind of reads like it's old porcelain or plaster that's starting to fall apart. But it would actually be nice to see it actually have fallen apart. Like maybe chips have come out of the hand, right? Like because like the way, at least the way I read it, it looks like it's kind of plastery. And then like take chunks out, like just take a little chunk out to make it look like it's a hand that's been cast.
Yeah, but overall, really nice piece. Clearly, the artist has a great understanding of 3D. Like I said, the gold material here is super nice. I really like the treatment of this. I really like the treatment of the materials down here. The lighting is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good presentation.
It's really nice. But more figure sculpting would do absolute wonders for this piece, I believe. And it's also like a really cool and creative idea as well.
It kind of looks like The reference used for the woman is the woman who plays the bad guy in Ragnarok. Not yeah, that is like Thor Ragnarok. What's her name?
I have no idea.
The woman who plays Hela.
Oh yeah. Claire Blanchett. Kate Blanchett.
Is that Kate Blanchett?
Yeah.
It kind of looks like that's the reference been used for it. Could be.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, it's a really cool piece, and the same thing that goes with the other piece as well. You know, presentation is really up there for both of these. It's nice to have a dinosaur and a person, so quite different this time. But overall, it's really good, really well done, and really well presented for both of them. So there are definitely areas that they can both work up. In the previous case, I think it's more about attention to detail and thinking about how you actually present your piece and what you want critiqued in that piece. And for Snow White there, it would just be more about fundamentals of figure sculpting to get you to that next level of making characters.
So thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more portfolio reviews, let us know in the comments, and we might be able to have a look at your portfolio as well. We really enjoy doing these videos, and we really hope that they are helpful. And if you want to see more content in general, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell.
If you're looking for training or high quality assets, make sure to stop by the FlippedNormals marketplace. And if you're interested in supporting us by buying our merchandise, you can check that out in the description below.